I tend to think of the 20th century as sort of or the long 20th century, kind of the late 1890s and the 1890s as well, up until more recently, as kind of the modern era in architecture, if not just the modernist era. So the modernist is kind of the middle of that big period in the 1950s, when the city really turns to kind of, there's a cartoon that even says, like, that was in Canadian Homes, that was like, Winnipeg loves flat roofs and formality. And the fact that you could do a cartoon about that and have people get what it meant really made it clear that Winnipeg kind of adopted the international style, probably more than any other Canadian city, because of the legacy, I think, of the U of M and the connections through Dean Russell to MIT, IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology, which was led by Mies, and Harvard, which had Gropius, Walter Gropius from the Bauhaus in Germany. It was forced to move, and so we had a lot of connection to those places. And so the reason for that, those connections in the 50s and even the 40s, was the legacy of the early 20th century, and the fact that Winnipeg was this huge, the biggest city in Western Canada, the third biggest city in Canada, this boom town that drew people, architects from around the world, but particularly the United States. I think John Natchison is a really important person to mention from that early part of the 20th century. So a leading Chicago architect who had worked with the inventor of the skyscraper, William LeBaron Jenney, and came to Winnipeg and forged his career here. And that's just to show how important a city we were at the time. And then I think besides the work in those years by him, we have work by leading New York firms, and then the fact that when the U of M School of Architecture gets set up in 1913, it's the first Western Canadian School of Architecture. U of A had one for a little while, but it kind of died quite quickly. And it's the third oldest school of architecture in Canada. We get an American to head the program, Arthur Stoughton. And so I think it's through Arthur Stoughton, who was a graduate of Columbia, but also the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, that we kind of get these connections that continue forward through Milton Osborne and John Russell from Winnipeg, which might feel like it's kind of out in the boonies, but strangely very connected to these, really important centers of architectural thought in North America: Chicago, Boston, and New York, in a way that's different from other Canadian cities. And it's a very, it might be funny to think of this connection to the US as unique, but in Canada it's really neat. And I think it's the connection between that and then how the architects trained in those other places bring back different styles and make it Manitoban, or make it even local. That's so cool.